I wish I had learned this truth many years ago. Be thankful for the days, good and bad.
All right, welcome to another episode of Warrior vs. Zombie, and I'm excited to introduce Reinhard Klett, a awesome warrior, to you in a second. But first, let's remind you, if you've forgotten or you're a new listener to Warrior vs. Zombie, what we're about. So success is a journey, it's not a destination. As warriors, we all have a history of ups and downs, wins and losses that are all part of making us who we are up to this point and provide a foundation for our path forward. We all battle our inner zombie as well as those zombies in our world. In each episode, I interview warriors who are aspiring leaders from really all walks of life: entrepreneurs, artists, health practitioners, business owners, authors, you name it, any inspired leader that has a story to tell. These warriors have a cause, they have unique value, and a vision that goes generations into the future. And our guest today, Reinhard Klett, is no exception. He's an awesome warrior, he's an engineer, a pilot, an entrepreneur, a coach, and an author. His 40-year warrior journey includes working in Germany, South Africa, and the U.S. During his time as an engineer in the corporate world, he was primarily focused on the automotive industry. We have something in common there. In the past several years after leaving the corporate world, Reinhard is helping his clients now transform their lives by being more successful in their work or their business, as well as leading fulfilled lives with good and healthy and happy relationships. The foundation of his coaching is his first book, Letting Go Saved My Life. I'm assuming we'll hear a little bit of that in his story, which is based on his personal life and death experience. Now I'm really intrigued. This book and his coaching challenges readers and clients to let go of whatever slows them down or distracts them from becoming their best self. Reinhard, welcome to Warrior vs. Zombie. How are you doing today?
Great. Thank you, David. Really very much appreciate that introduction. That's very kind of you, and I feel really honored to be on your show. That's awesome. And I had a chance to get to know you a few days ago and really enjoyed our talk and felt like a real good connection there. So I'm really excited you have me on your show already. Things are going well here. We live in northern Ohio, northeast Ohio, actually, just an hour out of Cleveland, in a small town called Worcester, and we're surrounded by Amish farms. We have currently, as the whole world is sort of affected by all stuff that's going on, and each area in which we live is affected somewhat differently. We currently in this area have talking about the pandemic, have a relatively high level of incidence, but and that includes myself and my wife. We got COVID about 3 weeks ago now, or 4 weeks almost, and we thankfully are doing very well. It was just went over very quickly. It was nothing to really worry about too much for us. And that's one of the things that I talked with a lot of people in this area. Thankfully, it hasn't affected them too much. I just, before the show, I took out the trash and talked to a neighbor briefly, and her husband is in ICU. Now he has very major health conditions, but he's actually improving, and it looks like he's getting over it. So I'm very happy in that respect. What was interesting for me when it came to this whole situation was just before it came over to the US, when it started in Italy, I was fortunate to see an interview with a Swiss doctor, Dr. Bilger, talking about it. And what was fascinating is he is the grandson. He comes from a family of doctors. He's actually the grandson of a Dr. Bilger who was in charge of a military hospital in Switzerland. And that was back in 1918 when the Spanish flu went through Europe. And every single one of his grandfather's patients survived the Spanish flu. And so he was interviewed. How did that happen? Because so many people died from it? And he said, well, my grandfather, and there he had something in common with my grandfather, actually, both of them went to med school before World War I. And still at that time, a lot of things that actually helped people to sort of support their immune system, as opposed to a lot of medical treatments in later days that were just suppressing immune systems or suppressing responses, immune responses, and therefore suppressing the immune system. And so that's why what he learned is, how to help his patients with the immune system. So that's why I was not very worried. I took care of a lot of those things, trying to do what I could do. And that sort of approach I like to take in general whenever we are affected by anything. When it comes to the pandemic, I like to look at the numbers, put them in perspective, compare them with other death rates, look at all the numbers that come out from the CDC. And also I'm looking up numbers that are, published in Germany. And that made me realize the main thing for me is I can't necessarily avoid it completely. And, sure enough, I got it too. But what I can do is what is within my power to do. And that is to really get my health up. And I think that's something that on a larger scale, not just on a personal level, is maybe something that we as a society need to address. And I would very much support that. It's our entire health system that is somewhat broken. When we have to spend 20% of our GDP on the health system and still have a very sick society with a lot of obesity and all kinds of issues where people die of heart attacks and strokes and diabetes, a lot of diseases which can prevent it, then maybe we need to, as a society as a whole, look at the health situation, from a broader perspective, address all those kinds of issues, and not just focus on one small little thing here like the COVID. And that applies to other areas in life. If we talk about the agenda that the president-elect is talking about, the environment, I sometimes think, why do we just talk about, CO2? And we become so focused on just CO2 when there's other issues that if we just focus too much on one thing, we sometimes overlook other issues that are very relevant today. For example, I'm very concerned about a lot of species being eradicated. And here, living in a small town surrounded by farmland, we see a lot of, insects and birds are going away. And that's in bees for pollination are going away. So that's not very good. That's a big concern, a big worry. And what is fascinating to me is there's things we can do on a personal level. Like we have a lot we live within the city limits, but it seems like we have more birds and insects in our yard than our friends who live out in the country, because we don't have a lot of pesticides and things like that. So what I like to do is, it's funny, there's this notion that a healthy yard, a healthy lawn is a lawn in which no squirrel finds a nut, no bird finds a worm, no bee finds a flower, and all those kinds of things. And they call that a healthy lawn, when in fact it's a dead lawn. And so I like the fact that we have a big grass, lots of big lawn, so to speak, but it's very colorful and mixed, and it's, from my perspective, healthy in that way. So a small thing that I can do, help plant trees and bush and so on for the flowers and the insects. So environment is another thing. And the third one that is often on the agenda is in politics, relationships between different groups of people. And my philosophy is that we don't look at either ourselves or at anybody else, for that matter, as a member of a group, but as individuals. And that we allow each other to have honest debates. And what I have seen in the last few months in all the political debates and even with the race stuff going on, I was thinking, if everybody would just focus on their sphere of influence, let's say if people on their side, if they would talk to them and tell them, okay, now don't do anything that gives the other side an excuse for what they're doing or thinking. For example, I would tell the police chief, tell all you police officers not to do anything that would give anybody an excuse to behave in a certain way towards you as a police officer, or behave a certain way in the communities. Don't give them any excuse. And if I were in charge of a group, let's say like the last few months, if I were a black leader, I would say to my folks, I would say, try to avoid doing anything that would give an excuse to those, who think you're up to no good, to give them any fodder, so to speak, or add fuel to the fire. So that's in general the ways I see it, the way politics affect us, every one of us. We do what we can, look at the big picture, try to be realistic, and not get scared. That's one of the big things. I think, a lot of people get scared and they don't look at the numbers. And fear, to me, is one of the biggest slave masters. And that's what we need to overcome by looking at reality and be realistic.
Well, you've blown through a whole lot of stuff there, Reinhard. That's crazy. Okay, so let me react to that, and I think you've given us a great check-in already. But let me first of all, I think that some of the things you said are really powerful. Some of our warrior guests who in the wellness space and other things would echo and high five you for some of the concepts of taking personal responsibility. I think underlying a lot of what you've said is, don't look to somebody else, whether it be government or your neighbor, to do the things that you can do yourself. And especially when it comes to your own health and well-being. So make sure that you've done everything you can, especially in the context of viruses and things like that, to make sure your immune system is as strong as it can be, so that if you are faced with having a viral infection like you experienced, that you're ready. You can get through it relatively quickly. You're not going to tax the system. You're going to be able to do that. So that's very profound. As far as when you talk about the environment, again, as a warrior, I'm going to do what I can do. I'm going to focus on the things. I'm not looking for, some media source to tell me what I think is important, or some government official. Again, part of the fundamentals. I know you have that German accent, and you didn't mention that, but I mentioned in the introduction that you come from there, and you understand that we all have opinions and have ideas of what's best for society or what's best for our community, and we all want to make sure that we're communicating those. But I think the most important thing we can do is exercise our individual rights to do those things, respecting others and realizing that stopping short of impacting and doing something that's going to hurt somebody else is clearly part of the responsibility. Another point that you very clearly made in there, and it comes in all aspects. I think that's clear, and there's no conflict with that, really, with anybody, any citizen of this country, no matter what their political leaning might be. So we don't make Warrior versus Zombie a political or a religious or any kind of thing. We're not one of those podcasts. However, warriors are warriors. We have our own beliefs. So you've communicated some of those things. Thank you for sharing your experience with the virus, which has been preeminent in virtually every check-in that we've had this is being our 30th episode of Warrior versus Zombie, and we didn't plan it that way, but COVID came on board 3 episodes in as far as shutting us down and pushed this podcast to a Zoom format. So again, I appreciate the audience. I appreciate you. We've had a great check-in, and now let's take a quick break. We're going to hear from Ricky Jean Wright and a little bit of snippet of It's Not the Getting There. And when we're done with that, we'll come back here. We're going to hear about your story, Reinhard. I want to hear about your story, how you got from where you started to where you are today. And so we'll be back with Warrior versus Zombie and Reinhard Klett.
But the miles become the teacher while the student learns real slow, traveling blind most of the time. Wherever you go, it's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's
All right,
not a
welcome
race
back
to
to
see.
Warrior versus Zombie, and we're having an amazing journey already here with Reinhard Klett. And I want to talk to you very quickly before we get into hearing Reinhard's story about our sponsor, Be Connected. Be Connected is where entrepreneurs connect, where business owners connect. So really, I'm going to invite you to check it out, get in on the ground floor where successful entrepreneurs are there waiting to connect with you. That's beconnected.com. That's BEEKONNECTED.com. And you can use the special code MyVisionWarrior if you want to sign up for free. So with that, we're going to get back to Reinhard. Reinhard is also a member of Be Connected and one of the ways we were able to connect here. But let's get on to your story, Reinhard. I know the audience is really fascinated by that German accent and wanting to hear some of your journey, how you got to where you are today in this segment. But tell us a little bit about your story.
Thank you, David. Yeah, my accent has somewhat helped me at times, I must say. It's funny that when you're a mechanical engineer by trade like I am, your German accent somehow helps because there's this perception German mechanical engineers are good engineers. So at least there's that perception. But yeah, I was, as I told you, I was born and raised in Germany, among one of 6 children, which was already a large family when I grew up. And that was in the Stuttgart area. And one of the things that when I grew up with, I was always fascinated with cars, and one of my uncles worked as a development manager for Mercedes-Benz, and he always showed us his new prototypes and things like that, and it was always fascinating. So that was the route that I decided to go. It seemed like at the time, getting a good degree in engineering and getting a corporate job in one of the big automotive firms there in the Stuttgart area, that would be a pretty good thing to do. But while I went through my studies at the university there near Stuttgart, I also became very interested in traveling and seeing the world. And so I did actually my very first internship in South Africa, which was a huge eye-opener for me. I was the first student at the school that did his internship overseas, but I thought I want to combine my technical training, my workshop training, that internship. I want to combine that with learning, getting to know the country, and also improving my English, because English was my second language, as you know. And so that basically led then, because I did that internship in South Africa, that led to a lot of connections and a lot of opportunities. Like I was able to get a Fulbright scholarship to go to Cleveland State University as an exchange student for a year, and then was able to do other internships in the US before I went back to Germany and finished my degree there, my engineering degree, did my thesis with Mercedes. But then I had an opportunity to get an additional degree in liberal arts, because I wanted to broaden my purely technical education, or a much more technical education with the liberal arts degree. And that was very helpful for me. And I really enjoyed that. But I went back to Germany, and but at the end of getting my liberal arts degree in Southern California, I actually had an opportunity to fulfill a childhood dream of mine. And that was how to learn how to fly. And I wanted to get a private pilot's license. And one of my friends actually became an instructor, and I was his first student. So I thought I'll take him up on that opportunity. And so I did, and without going into too much detail, what happened is, actually, this is the story that spawned my book. It was my third solo flight. When I was flying over Simi Valley doing approach to landing stall recovery, that I got into what is called a graveyard spiral. And I had no idea on how to get out of it. And it's not something that is part of private pilot training. So I was trying everything that I could think of with the controls. Nothing worked. I just kept going down very fast. And I saw that the last few seconds of my life were in front of me. And I finally, after I realized there was nothing I could do, I let go of all the controls and said, God, take this plane. And I let go of the controls, and instantly I came out of this and dropped 1,000 feet and came out at about 1,500 feet. Had I held on to the controls any longer, I would have run right into the ground. So that's a story I'll get back to a little bit later. But that was my life and death story, and you can read a little bit more about it in detail in my book called Letting Go Saved My Life. I went back to Germany and had an opportunity to work for Bosch in the automotive industry. Bosch is a supplier, and I worked as a technical sales engineer. And I had the opportunity to work with international clients, which was really exciting for me based on my English language skills, my communication training, doing my liberal arts degree and all this. I got directly into technical sales for overseas customers. And so I worked with customers in South Africa, in Australia, in Mexico, in the US, and it was a great experience. I was still single. I loved the long trips, the overseas trips, and I usually added like long weekends to it as well. And I really enjoyed that time very much. But then I was given an opportunity to meet a lady. I was already 38 years old. I met somebody that became my wife, and I met her through her sister. It was a really interesting story when everything moved very quickly. As I told David, we actually got married 3 weeks after we met, but it was just everything was a go. And part of that was that how we met and how we found out that we were right for each other. And that's something that I'm trying to tell my coaching clients as well. To be authentic is very important. I was single for a long time, and my friends all told me, you will never get married because who wants a guy with a station wagon? No woman would be interested in a guy with a station wagon. I said, well, that's just something I like. I can, go take my friends skiing. It's very practical and so on and so forth. And when I met my wife, she said, I've always been looking for a guy with a station wagon. So what this tells me is that it's very important for us to be who we want to be, that we don't live up to other people's expectations, try to be somebody that we're not, and then we have to sort of pretend for the rest of our lives. That is very stressful, and that just doesn't make a lot of sense. So that's why I'm telling you that story. But when we got married, because my wife's from Toronto, Canada, we decided to settle in North America. So I worked for a company in Ohio for a couple of years that was not automotive. It wasn't quite my field where I was very comfortable in, but I found a job with another automotive company down in Tennessee. Worked there for 10 years for General Motors, and it went very well. I was a program manager for the General Motors account, and I really enjoyed it. My problem was that at the time, I wasn't working hard enough at my career because I was very comfortable. I didn't want to move up ladder because it would have meant that I would have had to travel to move to Detroit. I didn't want to do that. I felt very comfortable in a small town in Tennessee, a small rural town. It was quite uncomfortable. But quite frankly, it started to get a little boring. And instead of working on my career, I was actually starting to invest in real estate on the side for a couple of years. And then in 2009, at the last round of layoffs in the auto industry in our company, I was let go because even though I had worked there for 10 years, I was already, I had the least seniority. Everybody else was there longer. And my boss hated it. He said, I really hate to let you go, but I have to. Germany told us, the German headquarters, we have to let you go. So that, as you can imagine, that was a blow. And it was affecting me in a sense initially because I grew up not having to worry about finances or economic security. My dad was a civil servant working for the government. My grandfather was working for the government, the other one who was a doctor. Nobody ever had to really worry about economic security. So that was a first for me. And thankfully, my wife, who had come from different circumstances, was already used to some economic insecurity when she grew up. And so she was not worried the least bit. She said, that's great. You're at home now, and we'll make it. We'll make it. And initially, I was making it really well with the real estate investing that I was doing at the side. But later in that year, the banking regulations hit, and that pretty much put that business on a halt as well. So I had to look for other things, but always something came up, and thankfully it paid the bills for quite a while. But finally, I had to decide to get back into a job. I said I have to work on something that I know I can do well. I work as a program manager again. I know it pays well also, and so that's what I should be doing. I put out my feelers, and I did another job rather quickly. And then within the company that I worked, I was pushed into another position that I really did not want. That was not a good fit for me, and so things didn't work out. And one of the main things I think that was an issue is when I am told to do a particular job, and to do it in a way that's incongruent with my values, that's inconsistent with my values, it makes me very uncomfortable, and I cannot thrive in those situations. And thankfully, in hindsight, I'm glad they let me go, because it was not right for me. And it actually started to affect my health a little bit as well. And so when I was let go, one of the first things I did is focus on my health again. I lost 25 pounds, working out, watching my diet much more carefully. And also, I've seen people, a lot of my colleagues in their 50s, in friends, getting heart attacks, getting strokes, having diabetes. One friend of mine, actually, unfortunately, he lost a leg due to diabetes. And just early this year, 2 years after he lost his leg, he lost his life because his kidney gave up due to diabetes. And a person that was a very successful entrepreneur, doing extremely well financially. He was also very nice, very likable guy, wonderful father to his family and everything. But unfortunately, he did not pay enough attention to his health, and that did him in. So that's one of the things that motivates me to not only look out for my own health and try to be balanced in that sense, but also to encourage my clients and tell them, listen, if your health, if your energy is not good, that affects everything else you do in life. So make sure, not just for your own sake, but your family's sake, to take care of your health. But also, I remembered when I was let go, I had to start something else. And I didn't want to get back into the corporate world and be pressured into doing something that I felt uncomfortable with. And so I started a business again, got back into real estate investing. And I remembered what the late Jim Rohn was saying, the legend in personal development. He said, when you own a business, work harder on yourself than you work on your business. So I took that to heart, not only in respect to skill development. I took a lot of courses and seminars on real estate investing. A lot of things have changed in the real estate world since I had been very active in it before. And but also I realized, because there were so many different ways of investing in real estate, I got a little bit into this shiny object syndrome, this method works. One guy says this method works and this is so easy and you just push a few buttons and we give you this software, and the money will just come in and all this kind of stuff. In the end, you have to focus on one thing and work hard at it. There's just no way around it. But in order to be regaining my confidence and also to be more focused, I actually hired a personal coach, a certified high performance coach. And what I really enjoyed the process, he really helped me tremendously in regaining my confidence, and also in being focused, really being focused in doing what I needed to do to move forward. And what was interesting, he also encouraged me very much to go back to writing the book about that story where letting go saved my life. And the reason why I wanted to write the book is this. I had told the story over the years. I had told the stories to many people, and they said, you just helped me. A lady in the South, that's how they speak. She said, you just ministered to me. And I asked, well, how so? And she said, well, you just made me realize what I need to let go of. And so there were so many stories and situations that people told me about. And I've had my own experiences with things that I had to let go of. And I tell a lot of these stories in my book as well. I felt like this is something that people need. I was invited to do a seminar, and I just told people the story. And then I asked them, what is it in your life that you need to let go of? And they slowly came out with things that they felt like that would be helpful if they could let go of them. And then I asked them, well, what has held you back from letting go? And people started to get very emotional. Some people were crying. And that's when I realized that I hit a nerve. That was really something that there was need there. And that's why I wanted to write the book. And I was so grateful that he encouraged me to do that, to write the book and then publish it. And through the whole year, as I was going through coaching, starting to build my business, I also, because I really appreciated the process of this coaching process, this high performance coaching, I was fascinated with it. And I had met other people in my network, in a BNI group that we have here locally in Worcester. There were other small business people. And as I was talking with them, I realized they had a lot of the same struggles that I had. And I felt like they need help. They need the kind of help that I got, building that confidence, being focused, not being so overwhelmed, and also not being so anxious about things, trying to be a little bit more level-headed and work on their mindset. So I felt there was a great need locally for that. And I learned that I could actually get the training and the certification for that coaching process as well through the High Performance Institute. And so I signed up for it and did it and got my certification. And I'm so glad I did. And so I have actually pivoted a little bit in the sense that, yes, I still do real estate investing, but I'm focusing on just more passive investing, rentals and so on, instead of working on rehabs and things like that require a lot of my attention.
Great. Well, that's actually, we've now kind of gone your story, Reinhard, and we're kind of getting into where you are today. So before I let you go into that part of it, we're going to want to take a break, but I want to just make a few observations about some of the things you shared. First of all, I do appreciate your German accent, and you're exactly right. It does convey a sense, having worked in General Motors. Actually, I started my career with General Motors. We do have a very high regard for German engineering. So that is, I'm sure that is a truth that you shared there. The other thing is, you covered a few zombies there that I just wanted to make sure the other warriors didn't mention. One of them is a couple of job losses there. Also, a near-death experience, which actually you said transit. One of the things that I constantly am amazed with throughout every podcast, talking to every warrior, is how little emphasis the warriors put on the challenges they've overcome. And I would say that is something that maybe when we're going through it, we don't realize that the challenge or the zombie is something that's going to help us in the long run. But like you said, with your job, you realize that it was really a blessing, or it was really a good thing that they had let you go, because it enabled you to, I think you used the word pivot or change to something that was more inspiring to you. And now, as you've continued down that journey, it's revealed other things that have led you to kind of where you are today. So there's a lot of nuggets there, a lot of things that the warriors that are listening to this podcast can take away. So, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you as a guest and talking to you the other day. It was very, very obvious that you don't see the things. Warriors are a little different animals, especially entrepreneurs, small business owners, those of us who've overcome, right? We don't see things as in the way. We just see them as on the way, and we got to figure out a way around them to get to the other side. Could be around, could be over, could be through, but one of the ways or another, as warriors, we're going to get through them. Well, I appreciate your story. I'm sure, Reinhard, there's a lot of other things we could pursue here, but when we come back from the break, we're going to hear a little more of Ricky Jean Wright, and it's not the getting there. But when we come back, I want to hear about kind of where you are today and kind of where you're going. And so with that, let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll hear a little more of Reinhard Klett and Warrior versus Zombie.
It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there. When you get there, you'll know. Funny how wisdom.
All right, welcome back to Warrior versus Zombie with Reinhard Klett, and we've had a great check-in, and we've heard a lot of his story, how he got to be where he is today. And so, Reinhard, now we were just getting on the cusp of starting to hear about what you're doing today. Would love to hear, as all the Warriors, why you're doing what it is, that your unique reason for doing what you're doing today, what unique value and so on that you feel yourself providing. And then if anything were possible, which we all know anything is possible, where would it go from here? What kind of impact would you have? So tell us a little bit about where you are today and where you're going, Reinhard.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you again, David. Appreciate that. Well, maybe back a little bit to this story on how it developed, how I explained to you how I got into coaching. Of course, I never thought I myself would become a coach, because my coach actually has a psychology degree, and I thought that's something that I would need. But when I realized I could become one, I got really excited, because, again, I felt like there's a lot of people, even in the community, that I could help. And it was actually a situation at my dad's funeral that shook me up a little bit to think about things. And my dad was quite a bit involved in doing volunteer work. And he worked for several nonprofit organizations doing volunteer work for them. And I was not aware to what degree he was involved and how much of an influence or an impact he had made. And so there were several eulogies at his funeral. And of course, I had already lived away from Germany for quite a while, so I was not fully aware of all the things that were going on. But all these eulogies told me all the difference that he made. And after the funeral, I told my sister, I don't know if I have enough life left to make the kind of impact that Dad made. And so that sort of grew in me the desire to really do something that would make a difference in other people's lives, that would affect them in a positive way. For a while, for example, we were helping out homeschool families from Germany to settle in the United States and Canada, because it is strictly forbidden in Germany to homeschool. And we homeschooled our children and had a really, really good experience with it, and we really enjoyed it. So it's not for everybody, I realize that, but those who can and want to do it, it's a really great opportunity it's a great alternative to traditional schooling. And our boys are doing fantastic. So that was something that I was able to work, I was able to help out. And I think I have learned it's important to help out in an area that relates to you, to your personal experience, because that's what gives you the motivation, that gives you the background. And then now I feel like having an impact on people that are going through a similar journey than I am going through, that is really where I can relate to them. That is where my heart is. And I feel more energized actually when I coach somebody one-on-one than I feel doing anything else. There's other things that we can do. And like in my real estate investing, I was leasing a property to an organization that helps people who have come out of drug rehab and things like that. But I have had to decide to divest myself of that, because that's not my calling. That has nothing to do with my background, with my personal experience. It's a nice thing to do, but we can only do so much. And it's best if we can focus in areas where we just serve people in a way that helps us, where we can really relate to people, and where we feel like we can really make an impact, and where we are uniquely sort of predisposed, so to speak, to help them. Now, I'm not saying that we need to necessarily limit ourselves by our, born talents that we're born with. As an example, when I started to take English as a foreign language, I struggled to get a passing grade in fifth grade to get English. My mother had the same teacher that my mother had, and the teacher said, "Well, your mother was never good at it. What do you expect?" That thing. Yeah. So the expectation was pretty low. So I struggled with my English for quite a while, but then I realized how important it was. I learned it, and took every opportunity to improve it. And also, when I wrote essays, my mind is all over the place, and so my essays, I always got C's, maybe occasionally a B, but not really good. Not in my wildest dreams would I have ever thought that I would write a book in English, publish it, and get a 4.9 rating on Amazon for it. Not in my wildest dream. So that means don't necessarily limit yourself by what you think your limits are, but maybe limit yourself when you say, "I'm not really motivated to do things because it's not my dream." It just doesn't feel like that's a strong desire, an area where you have a strong desire to help and make a difference. One of the areas where I have struggled with is confidence growing up. And part of it is, I think, that when I grew up, the saying went like this: no complaint is enough praise. So we didn't get a lot of praise growing up. And it was the fear that we would not be humble enough. But actually, it just created this feeling of not being very confident. So I struggled, as I told you, with my English. I was not athletic at all. Track and field day were my worst days in school. I mean, they were the days that I dreaded the most. My numbers were off the charts. I'm not talking the top of the charts, the bottom of the charts, But again, that's not an excuse not to do something. Now at the age of 62, I run 6 miles twice a week, to stay healthy and to stay fit. So we don't need to let our past experience or even our present condition limit us to what we can do now or in the future. So I say that with the confidence. Thankfully, my wife was able to help our boys a lot by giving them the praise. She grew up with that, and she was really good at that. And what we have found that is the praise that we gave them actually helped with their confidence and did make them proud or arrogant. And so my wife and I actually turned this phrase, "no complaint is not praise," we turned it inside out and say, "no praise is a silent complaint." And that has really worked very well. And I try to apply it as much as I can with people around me and my family as well. And especially those people that we tend to naturally take for granted. We don't praise them enough. And so that's something I constantly have to work on. But also the colleagues or the other business people in this area, that they have a similar cultural background, some of them Amish, Mennonite, that don't have a lot of confidence. And I'm helping them to build that confidence and also make them aware that, there's a big difference between pride and confidence, or ego, pride, and confidence. It was something that struck me a little funny when I first came to America, when everybody talked about pride as if it was a virtue. And I thought, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me, because for me, from what I have seen, is that pride often robs us of our objectivity. We have a magnifying glass for things that are good in us and bad in others. And then we minimize the good in others and minimize the bad in ourselves. And so the way I see it from what I've observed is that this notion of pride really robs us of our objectivity. And so I like people to be rational and to be objective. And I think that helps them in their personal growth. And not to be confused with confidence. Confidence, on the other hand, allows you to see yourself as somebody that's on a journey, that continues to grow, but grows with humility. And the two sort of go hand in hand, because our humility allows us to be able to see ourselves for who we are, as not perfect beings, people who have room to grow, room to learn, And everybody has that room. Nobody is perfect, and nobody ever will be, except for Jesus Christ. He certainly was. But if we compare ourselves with him, of course, nobody measures up or stacks up. So that realization helps us to have humility. Humility, when we realize we're not there yet, we can always say, okay, I need to learn, I need to grow. And as we are growing and we raise our level of competence, we also increase our level of confidence. So the two really go hand in hand. And that's something where I think I have a good understanding of that subject. I've thought about it thoroughly, and I discussed it with a lot of people. And it's also actually covered in my book a little bit in the chapter of letting go of ego, pride, and how to think about that. And I think that it's helpful to people, again, taking that approach.
So let me ask you this, Reinhard. So you've got a book, you're doing the coaching. It's obvious that you have a passion for what you're doing. You see this as kind of your mission to have that impact. How much impact are you hoping to have with the impact of your book? If anything were possible, what kind of influence? Obviously, you're influencing the community that you're in. You've had some experience and stuff. Do you have are you trying to reach the world? Are you trying to reach? I mean, what does that look like?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Well, I think the way I see it is I like to help change one life at a time, one person at a time, and to make it a ripple effect. And one of the things is with coaching, I can think of just my very first client, a business owner who grew up, with a very conservative background, an 8th grade education, but has a very successful business. And he has grown his business tremendously, but very stressed out, very overwhelmed, still deals with anxieties and things like that. And what's the point? As I mentioned to you about this friend of mine who passed away, having a very successful business, but then not being healthy. And sometimes, it also affects our relationships. And what I have helped him to do is getting into much better health. This first client, while he grew his business by about a third in 1 year, and also help his relationships with the family. And that to me, to see that is extremely rewarding. And that's how I want to help out. And also, what I have done in the past, much more than even raising my children, we have the tendency to always just teach and tell. And that is not how adults learn very well. The coaching process, by coaching people, it also helps them to understand the value of it and see the value. And as managers or corporate owners, they can apply more of a coaching process in dealing with their people, help them come up with solutions and not always micromanage them so much. And it will actually free them up of a lot of the time and the energy, and it will release a lot of the energy and the creativity of the people they work with. And it's just such a much better approach to do the coaching. So not only am I hoping to affect, and I know I have people affected those people directly, but I also hope that they will then in turn take a more coaching style approach as they deal with other people. But I'm also starting a group coaching program Monday morning, 6:00 in the morning, 6:00 Eastern time. It would be 5:00 Central time, for people who want to grow and just want to maybe start with a group coaching program. And I will announce that on my website later and through social media. Awesome. To get that going, so that people have an idea and sort of look at their lives. And then if that works for them, and maybe decide to eventually go and get a coach where they can do one-on-one. One other thing that I think, one of the key things that I have learned very much that I'm helping my clients with, and that is a mindset about how we look at failures or setbacks. You know, that's where I've really had to make a shift, because I must admit, I've had my worries. You know, when you lose your job, you start to have economic worries and money worries, and you try to do everything as a solopreneur, and you get overwhelmed. And so what I've had to learn, or what I've actually come to realize, is through the help of others, of course, not it wasn't my own idea, but I came to realize that my own fears and worries and anxieties, my own feelings, are like a canary in the coal mine for what my beliefs are. So if I have the belief that I will not have enough, that then generates questions like, what if I don't have enough? You know, I mean, I've not thought that, but maybe some people think, oh, my wife's going to leave me. Are we going to have to sell the house? Are we going to foreclose? Or all kinds of scenarios. But if you approach it with a belief, well, I'm still alive. I'm still around. I've gone through trials and tribulations in my life before. I've gone through economic uncertainty. So many people, most entrepreneurs have declared bankruptcy at one point in their lives. You know, you will always have enough. Something will come around. And if you go in with that belief that you will always have enough, you say, okay, you ask the empowering question, what can I do to make money? What are the best action steps that I can take to generate money? And that sort of generates like a search engine in your mind, and generates all kinds of thoughts and ideas on how you can make money. And those thoughts are then impacting your emotions, your feelings. And then you don't have that anxiety anymore. And with overwhelm, the same thing. If your belief is that everything is up to you, then you get easily overwhelmed. If you have this mindset, life is by you, unless you do everything, nothing happens, then that limits you. Then you get afraid and I'm going to run out of time. And what happens when you think I'm going to run out of time? You start getting impatient with people. You start being sloppy on your project. You are in a hurry. It's just not working very well. But when you say, okay, I have enough time for what I meant to accomplish today, and I don't have to do it all by myself. Whatever I meant to do, whatever your beliefs are, I believe that whatever God wants me to do to accomplish today, he will allow me to accomplish that day. And whatever doesn't get done will get done tomorrow. And I will not only have his help, that I will get the resources and the people, but other people will help me as well. You know, and if I have that belief, then I will address things with more patience, with a clearer mind, with a higher level of mental and emotional energy, and I will actually get more done. You know,
That's awesome.
Than when I'm grown. You know, so those are things that I've gone through, and I've really that's a breakthrough. That has been a breakthrough for me, and I constantly have to remind myself. I have to be intentional about it. It's not a once and done. For sure, no. It's more like that, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. It's a journey every day. Well, there's a lot of brilliance in the things you had, and one of the things I can see, Reinhard, is you're very, very much into the journey, that not only with your clients, and I love the fact that you used a term that I love. In fact, I've got a friend who wrote a book called The Ripple Effect. This guy's name is Doug Grady. And he's been a warrior on one of our episodes early on. And that whole concept of you can change the world, you can make an impact by changing. Well, my unique reason I may have shared with you is really to change the world one dream at a time. I'm always on a mission these days to find people who have a vision that inspires them, that then I can get also inspired by, and then work with them on that. But you clearly have that clarity, and frankly, the way you're approaching it, with one at a time, possibly doing some group coaching and those kinds of things, I find that very prevalent. And the beauty of it is that we talked about some of the challenges of the time that we're dealing with, but we would have never met if it wasn't for this thing called COVID and the pandemic, probably because we wouldn't have relied so much, but there doesn't seem like much of a barrier in Ohio, and I'm in Dallas, and we can just get on Zoom and we can do a podcast. You don't have to come to the studio. You don't have to do anything. So it's very, very powerful. You've given us a ton of nuggets here and a huge amount of value. Let's do this. I'm going to take another quick break. We're coming into what I call the Land the Plane segment. So if you've got any other further thoughts or whatever as far as things that you would like the audience to take away, you've already given us a ton of stuff. But if what I'm going to ask you when we come back is if there are one or two things that we should make sure we don't forget about what we've heard today, what would that be? And then I want to hear how we can stay in touch with you. What is the best way? So with that, we'll take a quick break. Another segment or a little snippet of Ricky Jean Wright, and it's not the getting there. And we'll be right back with Reinhard Klett and the final segment of this episode of Warrior versus Zombie.
Funny how wisdom and youth are always two different games. The years flew by so fast, is the common human complaint. The memories in our minds turn to diamonds in our soul, and by the grace of God.
All right, we're back for the final segment of this episode of Warrior versus Zombie with Reinhard Klett, and man, have we got a lot of nuggets to take away, a lot of learnings. It's an amazing journey that he's been on, that he shared with us, and very excited about his desire to impact, and I've seen his book. It's a great tool for kind of figuring out the things in your life that you need to let go of, and so I'm excited to hear. But Reinhard, like I said before we took the break, what would be one or two or three things should the audience make sure they take away from this podcast? If we don't take away anything else, what would those be in your mind?
Well, I'll go back a little bit to this ego thing or pride thing. Well, ego can be two things. Some people have an inflated ego where they think too highly of themselves, maybe in a sense of where they have an unrealistically high opinion of themselves. But it also goes the other way, where some people are very insecure. They don't have very much confidence, and that is what's holding them back. Both ego, whether it goes the one way or the other, is really holding people back from growing, from fulfilling their potential. And what I encourage people to do is not to compare themselves among themselves, and not to look at themselves in comparison. How do I look compared to somebody else? Or say things like, I can never be like that. Just focus on being your best self. This was illustrated to me just recently. As I said, I like to run, and I run in a park here, and there are other people who walk or run as well. And most people walk. And I was running by this one person, and one person told me, she said, "You inspire me." And then a few days later, another person told me, "You make me look bad." Now, that's a very different approach. They saw the same thing. They were walking. Somebody else was running by them, taking several rounds on the track. They saw the same thing, but they interpreted it very differently. And so when you see somebody, don't compare yourself, but say, okay, maybe the other person is showing you, demonstrating to you what may be possible. But don't make them feel you look bad. Forget about looking good to other people. Just try to be the best you can be. And that will really serve you a lot. It will help you to be more objective. It will help you to be more patient with yourself. It will just help you in your relationship with other people, because they will sense it that you're jealous of them or something like that. And it's not healthy for your relationships. So try to just focus on being the best you can be, and that will build the confidence in you, the confidence that you need in order to progress. And just do what you know is right and be congruent with your values, with what you know is right. Do that, and that alone will give you a lot of confidence as well.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's really what I want to share with people, because that is something where I see that is something that holds a lot of people back.
Well, it's brilliant. I mean, frankly, there's so much tied up. There's several things in what you just said, all wrapped up in that whole concept of ego and comparison, and even tied to some of the things that you shared in terms of the whole concept of scarcity and not approaching things with lack, but really realizing that there's so much abundance in front of us and holding on. Just brilliant. Just really, really, really helpful. Thank you. I mean, I really appreciate that kind of thought that you're leaving us with, is really just that really our don't be comparing. Don't look at our ego. Our egos can either... The other thing I thought was interesting is the fact that you said your ego can hold you back, whether it's you're thinking too little or too much of yourself. That whole concept of basically what the song in this podcast says, it's a journey, every day. It's not, it's not a race, we're working on it. Some people are ahead of us on the journey. Some people are behind, right? But we're all there trying to continue to keep moving forward, and that's what warriors do. So that's beautiful. So tell me this, how can we follow up with you, Reinhard? This has been amazing. I really appreciate you sharing with the audience. So how can we stay in touch with you?
The best way to get in touch with me would be on my website. Just look me up on my website. That is Carried on Eagle's Wings. That's CARRIED, carried on Eagles, EAGLES, and then wings, WINGS.com. And there you will find the different resources. You can also apply there for a free coaching session that I offer to see whether that is something for you. It's a 1-hour session where we explore something, but I want you to fill out an application. It's all about, even if you divulge some personal information there, it's all about you trying to get to know you, being as helpful as possible. It's strictly confidential. I treat it like a doctor or an attorney would treat anything that you share with me. So just, try it out and see whether that works for you. And also keep an eye out on our coaching program that I'm starting, the group coaching program that I'm starting in January. And then I will also actually add another coaching program early Sunday mornings. It will be a spiritual coaching program that I want to start. And that's going to be based on my second book that I'm going to come out with next year. So yeah, as you can imagine, the Carried on Eagle's Wings comes from my experience with the plane, where I felt like I was carried on eagle's wings when I got out of that downward graveyard spiral.
That was awesome. So carriedoneagleswings.com is the place we can really get updates on your books, your upcoming book, your consulting, your various things, and set up a free session to kind of see if there's some synergy there. So that's incredible. That's awesome. Well, thank you again, Reinhard. I really appreciate. I know this is. I know the warriors that are listening to this podcast are going to get a lot out of it. I'm sure that you'll probably get some follow up. And for those that are part of our audience, as you know, you can find us on any podcasting platform. Literally, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, iHeartRadio, just pretty much any place you can listen to. Look for Warrior versus Zombie. And again, thank you, Reinhard, again for your participation and sharing with our audience.
Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate it. I've always enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, it's been great. And so again, one final reminder for those on entrepreneurs and warriors out there that are really looking for a way to go forward in this pandemic or out of this pandemic and connect with people online and be able to build the kind of relationships that Reinhard and I have already built, and many others, or people that are used to doing things face to face, I'd encourage you to check out BeConnected.com. That's BeConnected.com, and use My Vision Warrior if you want to sign up for your free profile on BeConnected.com. So with that, we're going to hear the final segment of Ricky Jean Wright, and it's not the getting there.
It's not the getting there, it's the journey every day. It's not a race to see how many people know your name. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know. One day you realize time was worth more than the gold. It's not the getting there, when you get there you'll know.